Where are you at as far as your overall program?
Well, I mean, just talking about where we are right now. I mean, our team is a really focused team. They play really hard. They enjoy each other's company, as evidenced by, to me, the biggest is how they talk about each other. You know, somebody gives them a compliment. I mean, they're deflecting it over to somebody else.
That was a clip of our own Dave Wanstead's interview with Jim Harbaugh, and you can catch the rest of that when before Michigan and 10th-ranked Ohio State battle for a spot in the Big Ten Championship. Coverage of this one begins Saturday at 11 Eastern on Fox, or watch anywhere on the Fox Sports app.
Biggest game Jim Harbaugh's coached since the Super Bowl. He's had such a great season after being criticized heavily going into this year and to start the year. If they lose to Ohio State, it undoes it.
Yeah, I think they're going to take this one.
I do too.
Back here with Coach Mangini on the heels of Monday night's incredible game between the Rams and Chiefs. A lot of teams are wondering if they could compete with the talent that they saw that night. One of the teams you might not put in that category, the Dallas Cowboys, unless, of course, you own the Dallas Cowboys. Jerry Jones knows that tomorrow's Thanksgiving game against Washington is for a share of first place in the NFC East. After that, anything is possible. Here's Jerry with more.
See us in an air out like that. I see us controlling the ball when we're playing at our best. I think that if we got in shootouts, and if you recall back in Romo's days, we were in shootouts, and we could shoot out with the best of them. Elway out here, we got the short end of the stick, but we had one of the greatest games ever with the shootout here, Romo's next to last year. Having said all of that, I think that we can compete because it wouldn't be the same type of game, I believe. Because if you just assume that you got to score 54 points to win a ball game, then nothing we've seen says we can play at that kind of level.
All right, at least he said that, which we were all wondering. All right, we watched this Monday night game between the Rams and Chiefs, and we said, well, can anyone compete with that standard? But it really is, can you compete with what the Patriots have done week in, week out? Should that be sort of the NFL standard and where the Cowboys should strive for?
I think, Jenna, after, looking at Monday night, and now we come back down to earth, that we can really try to analyze what is the NFL? Is it really Monday night, or is it somewhere in between what we've seen last year? Now, we know the new rule changes. We know it's affected the game like we've never seen before. But let's not overreact to Monday, because also Monday, I don't believe, late in November, late in December, January, that you can play that type of football. As a wide receiver, I know as it gets colder and the weather gets below freezing, you can't throw a football 50 times a game and try to be as effective as running the football. So you can't do the same things. The footing on the surface, regardless if they say, oh, man, it's synthetic. It's still cold. That synthetic, it doesn't want to be cold. It performs better when it's 72. So the speed of the game has to slow down because the footing of the game. Kansas City, it's going to be cold and windy. So the cold and the wind have something to do with transferring the ball through the air. So you can't pass it as well as they did on Monday night. Pittsburgh, if they get the number 1 or 2 seed, it's going to be cold and chilly there. Now, we saw last year in the Jacksonville game, they were able to move the ball up and down the field, but it wasn't like Monday night in New England. If they happen to get the 1 or the 2 seed, they are the standard in the league. Because if you give Bill Belichick 1 or 2 weeks to prepare, you're not going to be able to. There's not going to be a receiver that's going to have 200 yards of offense against him, and he's going to limit some of the things that you try to do offensively, and they're going to play better red zone defense than both of these teams.
But one thing that all three of those teams have in common that you mentioned is they are all in the AFC. And when Jerry Jones talking about can these guys compete with the Rams and Saints, those are teams in the NFC. And the reason I mention that is those are also teams that you're not going to. The Saints play in a dome. The Rams play in LA. The Cowboys play in a pseudo dome. Like those are 3 places where the conditions wouldn't be a factor. So I am curious in this specific example, the Cowboys against these 2 teams.
Jerry Jones was right because he's also got the personnel. Jerry Jones has built his team the right way. I like that defense. I don't believe that the Rams would be able to run up and down the field. I don't believe the Saints will be able to run up and down the field on the Dallas's defense, on the Vikings defense. So No, I don't believe that the playoffs are going to be like Monday night's game, but I just think that as sports fans, everyone saw the Monday night game and they ran away with that, but let's not get carried away. There's a reason why they got 5 of those trophies up there in New England. And if you think no team, no coaching staff has adapted to the rule changes in the last 15 years better than Bill Belichick. So I had to talk about them because they are the standard of the league. We have seen playoffs where they've been explosive. If you have home field advantage in Arizona, we've seen them where they ran off some point. Aaron Rodgers on the road in the playoff, he's run off some.
Carolina,
they've been explosive. So, but I don't think the whole league is what we're going to see on Monday night, Coach.
And when I first saw this question, I thought, okay, there's no way Dallas can run with these teams. But that's not really what Jerry said. What I like that Jerry said, and it's indicative of the fact that they are understanding who they need to be. He was saying we're going to play good defense, we're going to control the ball, and we're going to change the narrative of these games. We're not going to get into this type of fight with that type of team. We're going to get into the fight that we want to have. And that, to me, is an extremely important part of this. If they can play the way that Dallas wants to play and needs to play, then they have a chance with every single team, because they look at the Rams, 273 yards a couple weeks ago
against them rushing. Seattle.
Coach Mangini's talking about the constant philosophy of you're going to play the game on my terms. It's just like in the NBA. You can't play Golden State. You can't play up and down. You can't play the 3-ball with them. And Coach Mangini says going out there from a philosophy standpoint, I'm going to make the Rams. They're not going to be able to play that style because I'm going in with a ball control. I'm also going to do some things defensively. I'm not going to put my safety one-on-one 5 yards off the line of scrimmage in the most critical down and allow them to have that explosive play. So, yes, we're going to control the tempo of the game.
But here's the thing. Jerry's right. They're not going to have a chance to compete if it's 54 points to win. What if it's half that to win? What if it's 27? What if you got to, like, what do we realistically think a great defense? Let's call the Cowboys defense in 2018 a great defense by this year's standards. They're top 5 in most categories, so at least a very good defense. What do we think they could hold a Saints or a Rams team to? 27? 28?
Well, this is the thing, too. I got to be careful. Dallas only turned the ball over 10 times this year. Is Kansas City going to turn it over 5 times? Because you give Dallas and you give Ezekiel them extra 5 possessions, how many yards rushing do you think they're going to have against that and eat up that clock?
Sure, and that was an outlier game for all parties. 5 turnovers isn't.
Well, 50 points is an outlier.
Absolutely right.
And I think it depends on how they get to the points they get to and how Dallas responds in those situations. So if they go up 14-0, the Rams or whoever go up 14-0, and Dallas responds by, oh, we got to throw the ball every single down, we got to get into empty, we got to be someone that we're not, then that 14 can go to 35 in a heartbeat. But if they can get to the point, if they can stay true to their identity and climb back into those games, to me, that's a much better approach. It's the response to different situations. And I think early in the season, you saw Dallas not being who they needed to be and how much that affected them.
And that's what Seattle, in the game you mentioned, it was a 1-score game against the Rams, and then Fowler makes the strip sack. They end up scoring to go up 12. There's 5 minutes left in that football game. Seattle's still running the football. Seattle and by the way, they were in position to win that game late. They got the ball back. So they stayed true to themselves, even in a spot where 2 scores, 5 minutes left, you feel like you have to pass. So there have been teams that have looked at the Rams, and we'll see about the Saints. The Saints defense the last 2 weeks has played its best football of the year, allowing 14 and 17 points, but who thinks there are things they can exploit against that Rams defense in particular. But it is ultimately very hard for me to think of a scenario where if at any point Dak Prescott's got to match points, that he has any shot. It would be about the defense forcing some of those turnovers, the way the Rams did to the Chiefs and the way the Chiefs did to the Rams for that matter. It would be about Zeke being able to be consistent with that running game. But I also think we have to be fair here. The Rams and Saints are without question 2 of the 3 best teams in football. That's who they are. The Cowboys, we don't know if they're one of the 2 best teams in their own division.
One thing Denny Green always taught me, man, we had a lot of private meetings, and God rest his soul. He used to tell me, Chris, we're going to be a high-flying offense. Our defense is going to be undersized, going to try to get after the quarterback. But, man, one day it's like basketball. We can't put the ball in the bucket, Chris. We're going to lose no matter where we play. So Patty Mahomes and them, they're going to have some cold days. Can they win a game when they're off? Because they're not going to be completing 80%, 75% every game. And in the NFL, that's what it becomes. Tom Brady's off for 2.5, 3 quarters, and then he catches fire. Can these quarterbacks, when they have those off days, can they be as effective as we saw Monday night? I don't think so. So that's what we're going to have to answer as we get into the playoffs.
All right, Coach, we'll see you a little bit later on. Got to take a break. Coming up, is this Kevin Durant's last season with the Warriors? That's next. First things first.
One of these days, you're going to